Welcome to Epoch Report, where we look past the headlines at the structures underneath. Today, the Arctic is emerging as a new trade route that could reshape global shipping and geopolitical power. We examine why a single Chinese container ship's 20-day Arctic voyage from Ningbo to Felixstowe is more than a stunt, and what it signals about the future of trade. The dialogue reveals that while Arctic cargo volume is under 1% of global trade, China has been investing for 13 years, building icebreakers and port deals, and now offers a scheduled service that hedges against U.S. naval dominance. Russia is building 50 new icebreakers, U.S. Secretary of State Rubio floated a shift away from Hormuz, and the Arctic Silk Road is positioned as the next frontier, eroding U.S. control, even if it doesn't match Suez today. The real question: is this a decade-away lane, or the opening move in a new geopolitical map? Now, let us get into it. Did you catch the news? A Chinese container ship just made the Ningbo to Felixstowe run in 20 days via the Arctic, half the Suez time. That's not a stunt, that's a schedule.
Sure, but one ship doesn't make a trade revolution. Ice melts in summer, then refreezes. You can't run a global supply chain on a seasonal shortcut.
True, but this isn't year one. China started testing the Northern Sea Route back in 2013. That's 13 years of infrastructure, icebreakers, and port deals. They're not gambling, they're building redundancy. Redundancy for what? The Suez still moves the bulk of Asia-Europe cargo. Even if Hormuz gets dicey, that's oil and gas and containers. You're conflating two different shipping worlds. But Hormuz isn't just oil. It's a quarter of global LNG and a fifth of oil shipments. If that choke point tightens, Europe gets squeezed. China sees that and is quietly offering a northern alternative. That's geopolitical leverage, not just logistics. So you're saying China is exploiting a climate crisis to bypass U.S. naval dominance? Even if that's true, what's the actual cost? Arctic shipping needs specialized hulls, escort icebreakers, and it still has a 100-day season. It's a boutique route, not a replacement. Boutique now, but watch the next decade. Russia's already building 50 new icebreakers, and China's investing in Yamal LNG. Plus, the U.S. Secretary of State, Rubio, just floated the idea of a permanent shift away from Hormuz. That's a U.S. official admitting the choke point is fragile.
Rubio floated a conversation, not a policy. Policymakers talk about diversifying routes all the time. It's cheap to discuss. But building the alternative infrastructure? That's decades and billions. China's still years away from making this a mainstream lane.
Years away, but they're already ahead. The Belt and Road Initiative was mocked as a paper tiger in 2013. Now it's a network of 140 countries. The Arctic Silk Road is the next frontier. It's not about replacing Suez overnight. It's about creating options that erode U.S. control.
I'll grant you the vision, but let's talk about the present. What's the actual volume through the Arctic right now? It's less than 1% of global trade. Even if it doubles every year, it's still a rounding error. You're betting on a story, not on tonnage. The volume is small, but the signal is huge. When China runs a scheduled service, not a trial, that signals to European importers there's a lane that doesn't depend on U.S. goodwill. That's the real story. It's a hedge against a U.S.-centric order. So you're saying the Arctic isn't about today's cargo, it's about tomorrow's leverage. Fine, I can buy that. But if the U.S. ever counter-invests in Arctic infrastructure, that leverage flips. It's not a one-way street.
Exactly. And that's why you should watch this space. China's already built the ports and the partnerships. The U.S. is still talking about it. In geopolitics, the first mover usually sets the rules. The Arctic is China's move, and the West is reacting. Fair point. Reaction is always slower than action. I still think the seasonality is a killer, but you've convinced me this is more than a stunt. It's a strategic signal, even if the cargo stays small for now. And that signal is what redefines trade routes. You don't need to win the present to shape the future. The Arctic is China's bet on a new map, and the first sailing is just the opening move. Finally, on the last theme, the Arctic as a strategic signal, the dialogue concluded that while the volume is a rounding error, the signal is enormous. China is building redundancy and leverage, not just logistics, and the first mover advantage could set the rules for future trade. The skeptic conceded that reaction is slower than action, even if seasonality remains a hurdle. That is all for this episode. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it worth your time. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next one. Leave a comment below with where you think this goes. See you next time.